As it happens, I was able to spend a few hours close to where we had the Welsh Mass on a monthly basis yesterday, and many thoughts came back. It was interesting that the power of the word of a spiritual father could orientate a whole life. We can influence each other. It just happens that this spiritual father had given all his priestly life to Wales, had entered completely into the Welsh culture and language, had acquired even a doctorate in things Welsh. And he wanted his work to carry on, and he had the intuition that the best way, because things weren't happening in Wales itself for whatever motive, was actually to work with a basis in Ireland, for he was Irish, and Irish speaking, and also German speaking, a brilliant scholar. But things could actually not turn out as people might wish. Wales has not always been well understood, even actually by Catholics. I remember way back in our parish in Carnarvon, where Mass was sometimes offered in Welsh, and also in Llanberis, which was run by us as well, things might not always work so well, for if there were many tourists coming from England, for instance to Llanberis, when the Mass was in Welsh, you might find that they were answering in English and drowning out the Welsh with English responses. But it actually is the tip of the iceberg, and the mentality of colonizing is there even in that kind of circle. Welsh is a bit of a joke. Well, actually it's not. And yet people don't realize that it does matter if one handles it as a joke. For what will happen? It will push the real Welsh away. And that is what happens. And so it encourages the game of our friend, who didn't want Wales for the Catholic Church. And Puff made sure that his dragon means worked. Interesting that a good Welsh saint protested. It was our own Winifred, where she had her head chopped off, Holywell, named after the Holy Well, which came from there. The water sprang up and never stopped springing up and never stopped doing miracles. And even the Protestants, of course, wanted healing. So even though they tried to stop it, they couldn't stop the Protestants going for healing, and they would go away healed, even in penal times. And going away with this, to each other they would say this, "Oh, what wonderful water." And they wouldn't talk about the saint because they couldn't. One day, 3 very violent Protestants came along and chopped off the head of the statue of St. Winifred. And a few days later, each of the 3 was dead, suddenly. But I remember actually how things nearly went a different way. The good Anglican Bishop of Bangor, Anthony Crockett, was hoping for a place of prayer in the Welsh Wales, and he was willing to give us a place if I could get the permissions needed. And so it was going that way for a while, and the good Catholic bishop was going along with it. But alas, a few months later he got cancer, and after a year he was dead and buried, and the Catholic bishop didn't want anything more to do with the project, and so I came here to Ireland, where this diocese took on a house of prayer, which could have happened in Wales. one asks, would such an adventure have worked? Probably it would have, but it would have been very different. It would have been based more on what we have in common. Very Welsh, and therefore very beautiful, with great singing, but one could not freely speak of things Catholic in that atmosphere. One would be toning down the message. Maybe that's why the Lord allowed that to happen. But I do remember quite a bit of correspondence going on, and at one point writing always, as I would normally in Welsh, to any bishop involved in Wales, getting an answer back in perfect English, even though normally if one writes in Welsh, one expects an answer back in Welsh, and I was not amused. And I wrote not back to him, but to a Protestant minister that I knew well, who lived at Llanfair Pwll Gwyngyll, Gogerach yn Robwll, Llantysilio Gogogoch, to which I made reference yesterday with a priest friend, because we were passing through. And it was a way of expending waste energy, lest I answer back, because sometimes it's better not to get into any kind of hassle and waste energy on an issue which actually is secondary, for the real issue is saving souls. And so I wrote to my friend in Llanfair Pwll Gwyngyll, Gogerach yn Robwll, Llantysilio Gogogoch, emphasizing the fact that I was writing to somebody who lived in Llanfair Pwll Gwyngyll, Gogerach yn Robwll, Llantysilio Gogogoch, because every time I wrote the words Llanfair Pwll Gwyngyll, Gogerach yn Robwll, Llantysilio Gogogoch, a lot of energy was expended, and by that means further disaster was averted. Because if one gets into an argument, one only creates a bad atmosphere. So rather than go straight into a problem with a head-on collision, it's best sometimes to circumnavigate. However, the issue was never really handled, and English remained the language of all Welsh Catholics except one or two here or there, because perhaps the hierarchy out there and further up never really understood Wales. As they say, for Wales, see England.